subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Noble's wealth is even more ridiculous than I expected, Blayn murmured. Wow, it's huge. Seiryu gasped in amazement. This is the power of the aristocracy. No wonder Ogre was so eager to protect them, Blayn said indifferently. Seiryu, however, was too eager to enact justice to wait any longer. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and smashed open the gate with a single powerful swing of her sword. Imperial Capital Security Force. Seiryu ubiquitous, she bellowed at the entrance. In the name of justice, I hereby condemn you, evildoers. Her dramatic entrance immediately sent the entire mansion into chaos, and the nobles' hired guards rushed out in full force. Blayn noticed something alarming. Seiryu's once cheerful and innocent expression had twisted into something feral. The contrast between her usual demeanor and the sheer bloodlust in her gaze was staggering, as if she had become an entirely different person. Blayn could feel the killing intent radiating from her. It was unsettling. I had a feeling she wasn't as simple as she seemed, he thought. This world really is something else. The Imperial Capital Security Force. The guards halted in shock upon recognizing the uniforms of Blayn and Seiryu. Go warn the master, one of them shouted. They immediately assumed this was about their protection fees. But Seiryu had no intention of waiting. Gripping her greatsword tightly, she lunged at them with incredible speed. Despite often being the target of ridicule from her colleagues, Seiryu only revealed this ruthless side of herself when she believed she was carrying out justice. Even now, among the Imperial Capital Security Force, the only people stronger than her were Ogre and Blayn. Just before she struck, Blayn called out, "Hold it!" Seiryu immediately halted. Even in her frenzied state, she was still obedient when it came to Vice Captain Blayn's commands. She turned to him, confused. Blayn stepped up beside her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Before we've confirmed the full situation, don't be so hasty. But Seiryu hesitated. Her instinct screamed that evil should be executed immediately. But Blayn had a point. Lowering her head, she relented. Understood. The guards visibly relaxed. For a moment, they genuinely believed this girl was about to butcher them on the spot. It wasn't a matter of whether they could fight back. The issue was that no one wanted to cross the Imperial Capital Security Force. The consequences would be dire. Soon, Arya's father arrived, accompanied by Arya and her mother. Arya's father had the appearance of a kindly gentleman, and her mother was a refined beauty with a warm, gentle demeanor. At a glance, they looked like an ordinary, affluent noble family. It was hard to imagine them as murderous psychopaths, but based on what Blayn had learned, there was little doubt that they were exactly that. Blayn, what brings you here? Arya asked, immediately recognizing him. Arya, do you know that gentleman? Her mother asked curiously. Yes, we met not long ago, Arya replied. Arya's father took a step forward and addressed them with a polite smile. May I ask what brings you two here today? If it's about the protection fee, we'll pay it right away. Protection fee? Blayn raised an eyebrow. So, you're admitting your crimes? Seiryu's expression immediately darkened. Vice Captain Blayn, can I execute them now? She asked eagerly. Not yet. Blayn flicked her forehead with a light hand chop. Ugh. The impact snapped Seiryu out of her murderous trance, and her expression returned to normal. Blayn had stopped her because he knew she was likely to kill them on the spot. For now, the bigger priority was locating any surviving victims. According to his intel, there were many, and they were still being held captive somewhere. Arya and her mother's faces paled with fear. The orange-haired girl beside Blayn had looked ready to slaughter them where they stood. Blayn, however, didn't waste any more time on pleasantries. Based on your actions, you are under arrest, he stated flatly. Now, take me to the victims. What victims? I don't understand what you're talking about. Arya's father visibly broke into a cold sweat, his eyes darting nervously. His guilty reaction betrayed him immediately. Seeing the criminals still trying to lie their way out, Seiryu's fingers tightened around her sword hilt. She was itching to execute them on the spot. but she couldn't disobey Vice Captain Blayn's orders. 20. Chapter 20. Justice executed. If you insist on denying the truth, then we'll have no choice but to use force, Blayn said coldly. Arya's father hesitated for a moment, his expression wavering, but then his eyes turned ruthless, as if he had made up his mind. He raised his hand, signaling the guards around them. His face twisted into something cruel and menacing. His previous gentle demeanor, nothing more than a facade. Kill them all. At his command, the guards surrounded Blayn and Saryu. Blayn's gaze darkened as he shook his head in disappointment. He no longer restrained Saryu and instead gave her a simple reminder. Take care of yourself. Try not to get hurt. Yes. With that, Saryu unleashed her so-called justice without restraint. Though the guards were far stronger than ordinary people, they were no match for someone chosen to serve in the Imperial Capital Security Force. Wielding her massive sword, Saryu carved through them effortlessly, heads rolling one after another. Wait. We were just hired. They're the ones responsible. Some guards, overwhelmed with terror, dropped their weapons as their legs gave out beneath them. Kneeling on the ground, they pleaded desperately for mercy. You are all accomplices. Once tainted by evil, the only redemption is death. Saryu's expression remained ice-cold, utterly devoid of mercy. Ever since the day bandits slaughtered her parents, she had developed an unyielding hatred for evil. Justice executed. No matter how much they wept and begged, Saryu swung her greatsword without hesitation. With her merciless rampage, Blayn hardly needed to lift a finger. Within moments, the guards had either been slain or lost their will to fight. Arya and her parents stood frozen in terror. The orange-haired girl's strength was beyond anything they had imagined. She had single-handedly wiped out all the guards they had hired. Attacking the security force is another crime to add to your list. If you don't start talking, I won't be able to stop her, Blayn said, his tone indifferent. He was, of course, referring to Saryu. By now, nearly all the guards had been slaughtered. The few that remained wouldn't last much longer. Once they were gone, Arya and her parents would be next. After all, in Saryu's eyes, they were the embodiment of evil. Realizing what was about to happen, Arya's father broke down. All right, I'll talk. I'll take you to the place. Then lead the way. Now, Blayn ordered. At that moment, Saryu had already finished off the remaining guards. Bloodlust still clouding her mind, she didn't seem to notice that Arya's family had surrendered. Gripping her sword tightly, she charged straight at them. Why isn't she stopping? Arya's father shouted in panic. Arya and her mother clung to each other, trembling. Before Saryu could strike, Blayn stepped in and caught her wrist. Saryu blinked, snapping back to reality. Vice Captain Blayn? They're still useful, Blayn explained. Fine, though reluctant. Saryu withdrew her sword. Blayn and Saryu followed Arya's family to a forested area outside the palace. In the middle of the woods stood a large building, which at first glance looked like a warehouse. However, the moment they opened the doors, it became clear this was no ordinary storage facility. The space was filled with an array of horrific torture devices, some still occupied by victims in various states of suffering. Corpses dangled from hooks on the ceiling, some headless, some missing limbs, others barely clinging to life. Along both sides of the room, rows of iron cages held prisoners with festering, reddened flesh, ravaged by disease. This was the work of Arya's mother, who took pleasure in infecting them with the Labora virus, her favorite pastime. Blayn's stomach churned at the sheer brutality. Saryu, on the other hand, remained unfazed. A sight like this didn't scare her. It only strengthened her conviction to eradicate all evil. Why did you do this to them? Blayn asked, his voice heavy with disgust. Arya's father scoffed. What's the big deal? These country bumpkins are nothing more than livestock, a waste of resources. We can do whatever we please with them. Exactly, Arya's mother added gleefully. Why treat livestock like humans? I love infecting them with the Labora virus, watching their condition worsen day by day, and recording it in my diary. It's simply addicting. Arya remained silent, her emotions conflicted. She had never expected that the young man she had taken an interest in would bring about her family's downfall. Some of the words he had spoken to her that day still lingered in her mind. She had been raised in this environment, her beliefs molded by her parents. Vice Captain Blayn, can we pass judgment now? Seiryu asked coldly. To her, these three were beyond salvation. Let the court handle them. And while we're at it, we can take down Ogre as well. Keeping them alive had its uses. They could testify against Ogre, making his conviction inevitable. If they were executed now, it would take far more effort to bring him down. Moreover, allowing Seiryu to carry out an unauthorized execution could lead to legal complications. It was best to avoid unnecessary trouble. The court's verdict was swift. Arya's parents were sentenced to public execution by beheading for their countless atrocities. As for Arya, though she had fewer victims, each one had been chosen out of her jealousy. She was sentenced to life in prison. Blayn and Seiryu attended the trial, watching from the gallery. As Arya and her parents were led away, she passed by Blayn and, to his surprise, suddenly spoke. That day, the things you said to me, did you really mean them? Or were you just trying to fool me? Blayn hesitated before understanding what she was referring to. After a brief pause, he nodded. I meant every word. Your eyes and hair are beautiful. You're already cute. There was never any reason to envy others. I see. Thank you. A faint, complex smile lingered on Arya's lips as she was led away. 21. Chapter 21. Taigu experiment. As a result of this case, Ogre, the current captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, found himself in deep trouble. Arya's family had exposed him in court, implicating him in sheltering them from justice. That brat acted so fast. And that damn kid Seiryu was with him too. Since some officials in the court were also colluding with Ogre, he quickly learned the details of the situation and knew that Blayn and Seiryu were responsible. His expression was dark and grim. While he had a way to suppress this problem, it would be troublesome to execute. At the very least, he could buy himself some time. And within that time, he had to make both of them disappear. Otherwise, he would never have peace of mind. Leaving them alive would only lead to future consequences. In fact, Ogre had already devised a plan. Now, he just needed to put it into action. That damn brat Seiryu was eager to get stronger, wasn't she? Then he would lure her into participating in the Taigu experiment. So far, every single test subject had died, without exception, after being devoured by the Taigu's power. Getting rid of Seiryu would be the easiest. As for Blayn, he was a trickier problem. After all, he had ties to Generalist Death. One wrong move, and he could end up in an irreversible situation. But no matter what, Blayn had to die. At that moment, Blayn and Seiryu had already left the courtroom and were on their way back to the Imperial Capital Security Force headquarters. Seiryu, when you killed those people earlier, did you feel even a little uncomfortable? Blayn suddenly asked. Not at all. Eliminating those evil scum was refreshing. Seiryu's expression lit up with a twisted excitement, her cheeks flushing slightly as if relishing the memory of the slaughter. Blayn fell silent. Seiryu really has a problem. Her obsession with justice and evil had reached near delusional levels. Much like his death's extreme survival of the fittest ideology, Seiryu possessed an equally distorted sense of justice. To her, no matter the severity of a person's crimes, all wrongdoers deserve the same punishment, death. She carried out executions with ruthless efficiency, believing that any trace of evil warranted immediate extermination. This kind of decisiveness wasn't inherently right or wrong, but it certainly couldn't be called justice. To Blayn, killing, regardless of the justification, had nothing to do with justice. He had no qualms about eliminating his enemies, but he would never claim righteousness as his motive. Seiryu's most dangerous trait was that her definition of evil was entirely subjective. If she ever lost her ability to discern right from wrong, she would spiral into an even darker, more twisted path. In truth, absolute justice and evil rarely existed in this world. That made Seiryu's mindset all the more dangerous. Blayn figured he should try to guide her in the right direction if he ever got the chance, before she went too far. For now, though, lecturing her would be pointless. Someone as extreme as Seiryu wouldn't be swayed by logic alone. By the way, Vice Captain Blayn, back in the courtroom, your conversation with that girl. Seiryu hesitated slightly, then frowned. A person as vile as her. What's cute about that? She hadn't spoken too bluntly, but just thinking about Arya's face filled her with disgust. One thing has nothing to do with the other. Her appearance is indeed cute, but inside, she's twisted and rotten to the core, Blayn replied calmly. Why said back, there was simply in the hope that she'd recognize her own sins while rotting in a dungeon. If possible, he wanted Arya to at least understand what she had done wrong. Unlike her parents, who had gone to their executions without the slightest remorse, still believing those they killed were nothing more than livestock, Arya had been sentenced to life in prison. She still had a chance at redemption. Then, am I not as cute as her? Seiryu suddenly muttered in a barely audible voice. She seemed a bit embarrassed, her face tinged with a faint blush. Blayn blinked in surprise before chuckling. Seiryu is, of course, very cute. But when you're butchering people and leaving behind a mess of severed limbs, not so much. That can't be helped. Those people were tainted with evil. Seiryu pouted, looking somewhat wronged. Blayn didn't press the conversation further. Changing her mindset wouldn't happen overnight. Blayn and Seiryu didn't always operate together. As a vice captain, Blayn had a relatively easy workload. Seiryu, on the other hand, was frequently assigned patrol duties. Ogre took advantage of this and sent someone to lure her in. As for Blayn, he just had to wait for the right moment when he left headquarters. You must be Seiryu of the Imperial Capital Security Force, correct? A well-dressed man approached Seiryu as she patrolled the streets. Yes, I am Seiryu of the Imperial Capital Security Force. May I ask what this is about? Do you need assistance with something? She greeted him with a friendly smile. I'm a staff member of an experimental facility directly under the royal family. We've selected you to participate in a Taigu experiment, so I've come to find you. The man explained his purpose. Taigu experiment? Seiryu's eyes instantly lit up with interest. You mean those legendary, incredibly powerful Taigu? That's right. This one is called Magical Beast Transformation, Hekatonkires. It hasn't found a suitable wielder yet, but we believe you have a high chance of compatibility. The man smiled, though there was something off about it. Not that Seiryu noticed. Really, she was ecstatic. She had always wanted greater power to enforce justice, and Taigu were known as the strongest weapons in existence. There was no way she'd let this opportunity slip away. I'll do it. Excellent. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Seiryu. If you're ready, please come with me now. Without hesitation, Seiryu followed him. Elsewhere, Blayn finally had a reason to leave headquarters. He had received a tip-off from a civilian and was on his way to investigate. But halfway there, he suddenly sensed something. Someone was tailing him. No, several people. Whoever they were skilled. Their movements were subtle, their presence well hidden. This wasn't something an ordinary person could pull off. Assassins? Blayn deliberately changed course, heading toward an isolated alley with little foot traffic. Then he abruptly stopped and spoke in a calm, indifferent tone. Come out, you sneaky rats. 22. Chapter 22. Kamui's offensive. As Blayn's words fell, three figures emerged from the shadows, approaching from different directions. They stepped out slowly, revealing themselves. Not bad. You actually noticed us. So, you deliberately led us here? As expected, our assassination target isn't simple, but unfortunately for you, we're your opponents. Their voices carried a tone of arrogance, making it clear they didn't take Blayn seriously. Oh, I take it you're Ogre's assassins, Blayn said calmly. At the moment, Ogre was the only person in the capital who had serious conflict with him. The assassins didn't deny it. A burly, bald man with a scruffy beard sneered, Since you already know, just accept your fate. Maybe we'll grant you a quick death. A heavily made-up woman, wearing a revealing outfit, cracked a leather whip against the ground with a sharp snap. Enough talk. Let's finish this and collect our reward. But before either of them could act, the third assassin, a tall, thin man wielding a blood-red broadsword, had already lunged at Blayn, striking first. Blayn remained composed, his expression unchanging, but he wasn't careless. He swiftly drew his black and white twin swords, relying solely on his eye's insight to counter his opponent. The moment the tall man moved, Blayn had already seen through his attack pattern. He stepped forward, meeting the assault head-on. His twin blades clashed against the broadsword, deflecting it, and in the same motion, he seized an opening to counterattack. Blayn's black sword aimed straight for his opponent's throat. Yet, in an unnatural display, the man's neck retracted backward, stretching like rubber. His control over his body was disturbingly abnormal. Blayn's strike barely grazed him. Even as his white sword followed with a horizontal slash, it only managed to leave a shallow cut on the man's neck, far from a fatal wound. Realizing the danger, the tall man quickly retreated. Blayn didn't pursue. The other two assassins had already closed in. "What a disgrace, running away from this kid," the woman mocked as she attacked. The tall man scowled, irritated by her words. "Mind your own damn business. Don't underestimate him," the bald man warned grimly, his tone the most serious of the three. That brief exchange had already proven that this young man wasn't ordinary. Even if they doubted he could take on all three of them at once, letting him escape would mean losing the bounty and their reputation. In the blink of an eye, Blayn found himself surrounded. At this distance, even his Mangekyō Sharingan's insight wasn't enough. His taijutsu wasn't superior to theirs, and these weren't ordinary thugs. They had skill, coordination, and had effectively cut off his escape routes. Even though he could predict all their movements at once, his speed wasn't fast enough to evade attacks from three angles simultaneously. Cornered, Blayn had no choice but to activate Kamui's intangibility. He deliberately didn't dodge, allowing the woman's whip to strike. "Got him!" she exclaimed in delight, her eyes gleaming. She relished using her whip to torment pretty boys like him. But then, something impossible happened. Her whip phased straight through Blayn's body, as if he weren't even there. Instead, it struck the tall man behind him with a loud crack. What the hell? You crazy woman!" the man howled in pain. I don't know," she stammered, completely stunned. Why had her attack passed through Blayn and hit her own ally instead? Blayn seized the opportunity. In one swift motion, his white sword pierced straight through her heart. This was the power of Kamui's intangibility, making him untouchable while leaving his enemies open to counterattacks. Of course, to land his own strikes, he had to briefly disable the effect. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to touch his opponents either. The woman's eyes widened in shock, filled with terror and confusion. All she saw in response were Blayn's cold, merciless blood-red eyes. Then she collapsed dead. Ding! The host has eliminated Imperial Fist Temple Expert and earned 9 system point. It was clear that while her whip wasn't a Shingu, her combat ability was on par with a Shinguiser. The remaining 2 assassins likely possessed similar strength. As for the so-called Imperial Fist Temple, Blayn had no idea what it was. He would investigate later. In reality, the Imperial Fist Temple was an elite training ground for the Empire's martial artists, emphasizing brutal physical conditioning. Its strongest warriors, the 4 Rakshasa demons, had honed their bodies to the point of controlling them at will, capable of fighting Taiga users barehanded. But these 3 clearly weren't among them. The 4 Rakshasa demons served as the Prime Minister's personal executioners, far beyond someone like Ogre's reach. "Lime, she's dead." The tall man stared in disbelief at his fallen comrade. They had come here brimming with confidence, yet in mere moments, they had already lost one of their own. The bald man clenched his fists, his face dark with rage. "We have to kill him, avenge Lime." Blayn had no objections. He planned to eliminate both of them anyway. Unlike the others, the bald man wielded no weapon. He relied solely on brute strength. If he got a hold of someone, tearing off their limbs was child's play. He was the most troublesome of the 3. But Blayn wasn't hesitant. His left eye focused sharply on the bald man's neck, activating Kamui's offensive ability. In an instant, the space around his throat distorted. Kamui's offensive ability worked by warping space itself. As long as his left eye locked onto a target, no physical defense could resist it. Even the most durable armor was meaningless against spatial distortion. With both eyes, the technique's speed was even greater. far too fast for most to react. What? The bald man's eyes widened in shock as he felt a terrifying force pulling at his neck. Panic surged through him. He was stronger than the average Shingu user, yet he couldn't even comprehend what was happening. A second later, his neck twisted violently, snapping instantly. 23. Chapter 23. Koro, as the bald brute's neck snapped, his head rolled to the ground, his expression frozen in the moment before death. He likely had no idea how he died. Blayn gained system points from a kill. Ding! The host has eliminated an Imperial Fist Temple Master and received 12 system points. However, using the jutsu of offensive Kamui had taken a massive toll on him. He had activated his jutsu twice, once for defensive intangibility and once for offensive spatial distortion, pushing his body to its limits. Of course, this limit referred to the threshold before his combat abilities were affected. If he used a third jutsu in quick succession, his body would weaken to the point of hindering battle. This proved that his current constitution stat of 40 was still far from enough. However, it was a clear improvement from when a single use of Kamui would leave him exhausted. While he could use Kamui again to instantly kill the remaining tall and thin man, there was no need. His base Mangekyō Sharingan abilities were more than enough to deal with him. Overexerting himself was unnecessary, especially since he couldn't be certain whether more assassins were lurking nearby. Playing it safe was the smarter move. System points, 21 ding. The host has exchanged Constitution plus 15, deducting 15 system points. Ding. The host has exchanged Strength plus 3, deducting 3 system points. Ding. The host has exchanged Agility plus 3, deducting 3 system points. To ensure his condition remained optimal, Blayn immediately converted his newly earned system points into attributes. Constitution, 55, Strength, 30, Agility, 30. With a substantial increase in Constitution, his body recovered significantly. Meanwhile, the tall and thin man stood frozen in shock. After witnessing both Lime and the bald brute die in such an eerie manner, he was utterly paralyzed. Seizing the opportunity, Blayn struck. 3 moves later, his opponent was decapitated. Initially, Blayn hadn't fully understood the man's ability to control his body. But with enough intel, dealing with him became effortless. Ding! The host has eliminated an Imperial Fist Temple Master and received 9 system points. Ding! The host has exchanged Constitution plus 9, deducting 9 system points. Constitution, 64. Blayn immediately used his system points to boost his Constitution. Then, without hesitation, he turned and left the alley, his expression calm, as if nothing had happened. He wasn't in a hurry to confront Ogre. His job came first. He could settle that score later. Meanwhile, in a sterile, white-walled room after conducting compatibility tests on Seiryu, the biological Taigu, magical beast transformation, Hekatonkai's, unexpectedly reacted to her from within its nutrient container. This had never happened before. Normally, Hekatonkai's remained motionless when faced with unsuitable test subjects. Seiryu noticed several body bags lined up around the room, but in her naivety, she only found it strange rather than suspicious. And just like that, the Taigu experiment was a success. Seiryu became the only test subject to survive, the sole person to form a bond with magical beast transformation, Hekatonkai's. At this moment, she was holding a small, white puppy with 2 tiny black dots for eyes. It looked adorable, rubbing its head against her affectionately, clearly recognizing her as its master. Only now did the staff dare to open the reinforced steel door and step inside. They stared at Seiryu as if they had just witnessed a miracle, especially the staff member who had been colluding with Ogre. He was the most shocked. He had merely taken Ogre's request to ensure this girl's accidental death, never expecting her to become the experiment's only success. An ironic twist of fate, he quickly adjusted his attitude. Producing a successful Taiga user was far more valuable than whatever plans Ogre had. Now that Seiryu had become the master of Hekatonkai's, harming her was no longer an option. Taiga wielders were an invaluable asset to the Empire. He decided not to inform Ogre about the experiment's outcome. In fact, he intended to cut ties with him altogether, as if nothing had ever happened. Congratulations, Miss Seiryu. Your experiment was a complete success. This Taigu is now bound to you. He smiled as he spoke. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Seiryu responded with heartfelt gratitude, completely unaware that she was supposed to be a victim. Instead, she had gained a powerful Taigu by sheer luck. The staff, feeling guilty, avoided the subject entirely. Miss Seiryu, once you return, take time to familiarize yourself with your Taiga's abilities. Try to practice and build synergy with it. Understood. With that, Seiryu cheerfully left, Hekatonkai's in her arms. On her way back to the Imperial Capital Security Force, Seiryu held up the little puppy and mused, I should give you a name. Calling you by your full title is a hassle. Hekatonkai's made a small noise, as if it understood her. After thinking for a moment, Seiryu decided, I'll call you Koro. How's that sound? Koro excitedly waved its tiny limbs, seeming to approve of the name. Then from now on, we're partners, Koro. Seiryu held Koro close, not viewing it as just a weapon, but as a companion. I'll introduce you to Vice Captain Blayn. He's also a warrior of justice. She believed it was her righteous heart that had allowed Koro to bond with her. So naturally, she was convinced Koro would also like Vice Captain Blayn. With that in mind, she quickened her pace toward the Imperial Capital Security Force headquarters. However, after searching for a while, she couldn't find Blayn anywhere. Left with no choice, she went to ask Ogre. Ogre was stunned to see Seiryu alive. Did the assassin not make a move yet? How incompetent. Although he was aware of Hekatonkai's, he had never seen what it actually looked like. So he failed to recognize the small puppy at Seiryu's feet as the legendary Taigu. After all, no one had ever successfully bonded with it, so he simply assumed the staff hadn't initiated the experiment yet. Moreover, Koro was timidly peeking out from behind Seiryu, its small frame hardly exuding the presence one would expect from Taigu. You're looking for Blayn? Hearing her question, Ogre burst into laughter, his voice dripping with mockery. He's probably been torn to pieces by now, but if you want, I can show you his corpse. What? For a moment, Seiryu was speechless. Then, realization hit. Her expression contorted into a vicious snarl, her voice dropping to a chilling tone. Koro, prepare to judge the guilty. 24. Chapter 24. Seiryu takes a master at Seiryu's command. Koro's body suddenly began to grow enormous. The Taigu Hekatonkai's had the ability to gigantify, drastically increasing both its strength and defense. As long as its core remained intact, it would continue to regenerate, no matter how much damage it took. Koro also had a secret technique, Berserk Mode, which made it grow even larger, its body packed with bulging muscles, enhancing its power to an extreme degree. However, the side effect was severe. It would be completely immobilized for months afterward. To Seiryu, Vice Captain Blayn was the person she held dearest, the embodiment of the justice she revered above all else. Ogre had already been tainted by evil, but now he had also killed the most important person in her life, Vice Captain Blayn. She could never allow such evil to continue to exist. As Ogre watched Koro, now dozens of times larger, towering behind Seiryu, his smirk instantly froze. What the hell is that? He hadn't yet realized that this was the Taigu, Hekatonkai's. Seiryu didn't waste any words and ordered Koro to attack. Snapping out of his shock, Ogre finally grasped the situation. This was a beast-type Taigu, most likely the rumored magical beast transformation, Hekatonkai's. This damn brat actually managed to bond with a Taigu. But there was no time to dwell on it. Koro was already lunging at him. Ogre immediately drew his sword to defend himself, but deep down, he knew he stood no chance. Taiga were simply too powerful. Even though his sword was no ordinary weapon, it was nothing compared to a Taigu, not even on par with a Shingu. His martial skills were formidable, but against a Taigu, they were meaningless. And worse, his opponent wasn't just Koro, there was also Seiryu. Ogre's entire focus was locked onto Koro, and in that split second, he failed to notice Seiryu. Koro's overwhelming strength forced Ogre back again and again. Seizing the moment, Seiryu leaped onto Koro's back, using its head as a springboard. She flipped through the air, sword in hand, and slashed downward, aiming straight for Ogre's head. Only then did Ogre realize that Seiryu was also a combatant, but it was already too late. Pushed to his limits by Koro, he had no strength left to block. In the next instant, Ogre's head was split open. Koro devour the wicked. Seiryu's voice was cold and unwavering. Without hesitation, Koro opened its massive jaws and swallowed Ogre's corpse whole. With the battle over, the ferocity in Seiryu's expression faded. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed into a duck-sitting position on the ground. Her eyes were red, but she smiled. Vice Captain Blayn, I have avenged you. I will carry on your will and uphold justice until my last breath. But at that exact moment, Blayn returned. The fierce battle had caused a massive disturbance, throwing the Imperial capital's security forces into chaos. Hearing the commotion, Blayn rushed over, and what he found was a blood-soaked battlefield. Chunks of flesh littered the ground. Ogre's body was nowhere to be seen, but the blood dripping from Koro's mouth left no room for doubt. Then, he overheard Seiryu's declaration. His mouth twitched slightly as he sighed. Seiryu, I'm not dead. Voice. A familiar voice. At first, Seiryu thought she was hallucinating. Her eyes widened in shock, and she spun around, only to see a very much alive Blayn standing there. For a moment, she was frozen. Then, she bolted toward him and threw herself into his arms. Blayn nearly phased out of reflex, but he stopped himself. After all, there was no killing intent in her embrace. Vice Captain Blayn, I thought you were... Before she could finish, tears streamed down her face. Seeing him alive, seeing him safe, overwhelmed her with relief. It looks like Ogre must have told you something. Blayn quickly pieced together what had happened and explained, it's true that 3 assassins from the Imperial Fist Temple tried to take me out, but I killed them all. You're not hurt, are you? Seiryu immediately reached to lift Blayn's shirt, eager to check for wounds. Blayn stopped her, calmly stating, of course not. Those guys weren't strong enough to touch me. That's amazing. Seiryu beamed with admiration. I've also eliminated Ogre. These villains deserve to be purged. Seiryu's eyes shone with anticipation as she leaned forward slightly. It was clear she was waiting for praise, perhaps even hoping for a pat on the head. Blayn hesitated. If he wasn't careful with his words, his praise might push Seiryu further down an extreme path. She was already dangerously devoted to the idea of absolute justice. If left unchecked, Seiryu, you did well. He patted her head gently. But I don't want you to become fixated on absolute justice or absolute evil. Seiryu's smile faltered slightly. Why? Because absolute justice and absolute evil don't exist. And just because someone has sinned doesn't always mean they deserve to die. Blayn saw this as a chance to guide her. For example, if someone stole a steam bun just to survive, they'd technically be committing a crime. But what if that same person later saved countless lives? Would you call them good or evil? Seiryu's mind went blank. This I don't know, Blayn continued. See? No one is purely good or evil. Ogre was a ruthless criminal. His death was justified. But a simple thief? They should be punished accordingly. But that doesn't mean they deserve to die. Blayn wasn't just speculating. In the original timeline, even petty thieves were executed by Seiryu, either devoured by Koro or personally beheaded. The question of whether a thief deserved to die wasn't what worried him most. It was the fear that Seiryu's black and white sense of morality would spiral further, blinding her to shades of gray. If that happened, tragedy would follow. I understand. Seiryu lowered her head slightly. Blayn wasn't sure if she truly accepted his words, but at least she wasn't arguing. Frankly, he was probably the only person she'd even consider listening to. If anyone else had tried to tell her this, she might have just cut them down on the spot. Blayn sighed. I know this might be hard for you to accept, but I really do want to help you. If you ever need to talk, you can always come to me. Yes. Still hugging him, Seiryu squeezed him even tighter. Then, out of nowhere, Vice Captain Blayn, can you be my master? I feel like I still have a lot to learn. 25, Chapter 25. The Revolutionary Army Become My Disciple. Blayn was slightly surprised. He hadn't expected Seiryu to make such a request. Is that not allowed? Seiryu asked softly. It's not that I can't, but I honestly don't have much to teach you. If you don't mind that, then I have no objections, Blayn replied frankly. His strength came from the double Kamui and the system's enhancements, so he felt he had nothing to teach Seiryu. What was he supposed to do? Teach her how to allocate skill points. But Seiryu didn't care in the slightest. She immediately declared, then from now on, I'll call you master. Blayn nodded slightly. At that moment, his attention turned to the small dog beside Seiryu, which let out a satisfied burp. Ogre had likely ended up as this creature's meal. Seiryu, this is... Blayn asked. Oh, right. I should introduce you, master. This is Koro, my new partner. I just met him today, Seiryu said, picking up Koro. He's cute, but he looks a bit different from an ordinary dog. Blayn had an instinctive feeling that Koro was no ordinary creature. That's because he's a Taigu. Apparently, he's called Magical Beast Transformation. Hekatonkai's, but that name's too much of a mouthful, so I just call him Koro, Seiryu explained. A Taigu, huh? Blayn was a bit surprised. This was his first time encountering a biological Taigu. So far, he had seen weapon-type Taigu, blood-type Taigu, and now a biological Taigu. There were likely even more varieties. Speaking of which, he had nearly forgotten. He should make time to study ancient records on Taigu and their abilities. That way, if he ever faced an enemy Taigu user, he wouldn't be caught off guard by their special abilities. Chirp! Koro let out a cheerful noise. Looks like Koro can sense Master's righteous heart. He really likes you, Seiryu said happily. Blayn had a different theory. Koro was probably just influenced by Seiryu's enthusiasm rather than sensing any so-called righteous heart in him. With the death of Ogre, the former captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, Blayn was appointed as his successor. As for Seiryu and Koro, who had killed Ogre, neither faced any punishment. Seiryu was an important Taigu user, and Ogre himself had been a highly controversial figure. After his death, not a single person spoke up for him. The citizens, on the other hand, cheered. After all, they had suffered under Ogre for far too long. He had committed countless atrocities against the common people. Blayn and Seiryu continued their duties in the Imperial Capital Security Force. Blayn's daily routine consisted of handling various affairs, sparring with Seiryu, and studying books on Taigu in the library. In a spacious training ground, Blayn and Seiryu were once again engaged in a sparring session, hand-to-hand combat. Seiryu relied on these sessions to improve her martial arts skills. She was growing stronger, but she still couldn't surpass Blayn. His Mangekyō Sharingan was simply too broken. Even without using techniques like intangibility, the heightened perception granted by his Mangekyō already gave him an overwhelming advantage. After today's training session, Seiryu sat on the ground, gulping down water. Thanks for your help again today, Master. I'll work even harder. Don't push yourself too hard. Moderation is important, Blayn advised. I know, but I still want to grow stronger as soon as possible. Otherwise, I won't be able to eliminate evil, Seiryu said firmly. Here we go again. Didn't we already talk about this? Blayn sighed. Anyway, what's the next evil you plan to eliminate? I took what you said to heart, Master. I've been thinking about it these past few days. Different crimes deserve different punishments, but I still don't fully understand where the lines should be drawn. That's why I'll need to ask for your guidance from time to time. Ever since Blayn had spoken to her about justice and morality, Seiryu had been contemplating it daily, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized her master was right. Good. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me anytime, Blayn nodded. It seemed that his words hadn't gone to waste. Seiryu had genuinely listened. As for the evil I want to eradicate, of course, it's the Revolutionary Army rebels and the foreign tribes, especially the assassination group Night Raid, which has suddenly become active in the capital. I think they're the greatest evil, Seiryu said with conviction. The Revolutionary Army. It's not so easy to label them as purely good or evil. You should give that some serious thought. Blayn said thoughtfully. Anyone familiar with history knew that the rise and fall of feudal dynasties followed an almost inevitable cycle. The fact that Taegu had existed for over 1,000 years meant that the empire itself had also endured for that long. A remarkable feat. Given the current state of affairs, the empire was already deep in a classic period of corruption and decay. The emergence of a revolutionary force was only natural. There was no simple justice or evil to assign here. One regime would fall, another would rise, and history would repeat itself. Seiryu frowned. But the Revolutionary Army, Blayn interrupted, shaking his head. Actually, from what I've seen, most of the Revolutionary Army's members are impoverished civilians who have suffered under the Empire. And the official who was assassinated by night raid 2 days ago, he appeared to be a just and upright man. But in reality, he had dealings with Ogre. He was a corrupt official. Blayn continued, "Of course, we can't take things at face value. Whether it's your perspective or mine, let's hold off on making final judgments for now. We'll see things with our own eyes first, then decide." Seiryu nodded obediently. "Understood. I really should consult with you more often, Master. I still have so much to learn. As for the foreign tribes, that depends on the situation," Blayn said. "In most cases, they're invaders, pillaging, slaughtering, and seizing land. That's hardly justifiable. No matter how much turmoil exists within the empire, foreign forces have no right to interfere." He recalled that Isteth's entire tribe had been massacred by the invading northern tribes. There was no need to debate whether they were justified or not. From his perspective, it wasn't a matter of justice or evil. If one's homeland was invaded, retaliation was a given. No matter the distance, enemies had to be eliminated. I heard that General Isteth recently led a campaign against the foreign tribes. And after that, General Najinda defected, taking a group of rebels and joining the Revolutionary Army. But General Isteth hunted down all of the rebels. Only Najinda managed to escape with the help of the Revolutionary Army, Seiryu recalled. Blayn mused, "I'm guessing she saw something during the campaign against the foreign tribes. After all, Isteth was ruthless. She showed no mercy to her enemies. Najinda had likely witnessed something during the war that she simply couldn't accept." 26. Chapter 26. Isteth has returned. There was no clear right or wrong in these matters. If Isteth didn't show cruelty to the foreign tribes, those same tribes would turn around and massacre innocent civilians along the empire's borders. Unless complete unification was achieved, this endless cycle of blood feuds would never stop. This world had yet to reach the level of civilization that Blayn had known before his transmigration. It was just as unreasonable to judge ancient feudal dynasties by modern moral standards. During the feudal era, treating enemy soldiers and civilians with kindness was nearly impossible, and armies were far from being highly disciplined. One could only say that General Najinda was simply too kind-hearted. Of course, Isteth's army's brutality was just a catalyst. The real reason for Najinda's defection lay in the empire's deep-seated corruption and darkness, something a general like her could not have been unaware of. Najinda has now joined the Revolutionary Army. "No, she shouldn't even be called a general anymore. She's a rebel," Seiryu said. "But for now, the most dangerous threat is still Night Raid. They've been wreaking havoc in the capital, and from what I've heard, every member of Night Raid is a Taiga user. For now, let's just observe," Blayn said calmly. "Unless they start indiscriminately killing innocents or come looking for trouble, there's no need to consider them enemies just yet. As long as Night Raid was truly targeting corrupt officials and criminals, Blayn had no reason to oppose them. The darkness of the Empire was caused by those very people. Blayn wouldn't mind seeing them all eliminated." That day, someone arrived at the palace, requesting an audience with the Prime Minister. Inside the Grand Hall, the current Prime Minister was feasting greedily. His name was Honest, the true mastermind behind the Empire's corruption and decline. He appeared obese, but beneath the fat was a powerful physique. In his youth, he had undergone strict training, which allowed him to maintain his health despite his excessive drinking and gluttony. Lord Honest, Ogre, the captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, has been killed. The ones responsible were Vice Captain Blayn and a Taigu user named Seiryu. Judging by Blayn's actions, it doesn't seem like he's on our side. The man kneeling before Honest was a high-ranking official, clearly someone who had been associated with Ogre. He was also one of the many corrupt bureaucrats in Honest's faction. I already heard about it. Ogre's death is truly heartbreaking. It's made my appetite surge. I had to eat 2 extra sausages just to cope with the grief, Honest said, eyes glistening with crocodile tears as he spoke nonsense, never once pausing from his feast. The official, long accustomed to Honest's bizarre behavior, remained unfazed. But don't concern yourself with Blayn. He was personally recommended by General Death, Honest said, his expression shifting in an instant, faster than flipping a page in a book. I also heard that Ogre hired 3 masters from the Imperial Fist Temple to assassinate Blayn, only for all of them to be slaughtered instead. No wonder his death values him so highly. He's probably quite the capable killer. Honest and his death had a mutually beneficial relationship. Honest knew that his death cared only for war and had no interest in politics, which made her trustworthy in his eyes. He needed his death to defend the Empire from external threats and to solidify its rule. At the same time, he saw her as a counterbalance to Great General Budo. Great General Budo was the highest-ranking commander of the Empire's military. Before his death rose to power, Budo had been known as the Empire's strongest warrior. Even after his death's rise, they were still considered equals in strength. This made Honest wary of Budo's influence. Meanwhile, Isteth had no interest in politics. She only cared about power and combat. Honest had given her full military authority, even granting her a Taigu, allowing her to indulge in battle and bloodshed. Isteth had always been interested in fighting Budo, which made her more than willing to cooperate with Honest. Blayn, as someone personally recruited by Isteth, naturally had Honest's favor, certainly more than someone like Ogre. In fact, Honest hoped that the people under Isteth's command would become even stronger, making it easier to counter Budo's influence. Is that so? The official immediately panicked. I was foolish. I didn't realize he was someone General Isteth valued. He knew all too well how unpredictable Honest was. One wrong word, and he could lose his life. But Honest barely spared him a glance. Instead, he muttered to himself, "Let's have him transferred to the assassination unit. Expand their numbers to deal with Night Raid and the Revolutionary Army." Understood. The official dared not say another word, fearing he might accidentally offend Honest. As he left the palace, tail between his legs, Isteth walked in from outside. She didn't even spare the fleeing man a glance. Isteth, just in time. That Blayn you recommended has been making things rather interesting lately, Honest said, welcoming her with a grin. Oh, let's hear it, Isteth replied, intrigued. Unlike the other officials who had to kneel before Honest, Isteth stood as his equal. The former captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, Ogre, was killed a few days ago. That fool hired 3 experts from the Imperial Fist Temple to assassinate Blayn, only to end up dead himself. Your recommendation was clearly well placed, Honest said. Of course. Those 3 alone never stood a chance against him, Isteth said, showing not the slightest surprise. She had already known Blayn was powerful. Also, it seems he's taken on an apprentice, someone named Seiryu. This apprentice of his is quite interesting as well, having successfully bonded with the Taigu Hekatonkires. Honest added, half speaking to his death, half musing to himself. Now that I think about it, this Taigu user might be a good fit for the assassination unit as well. Seiryu. Isteth had no idea who that was, but the name sounded feminine. Her gaze grew sharp. A woman. Seems like it. I don't know much, but from what I've heard, she's a little girl who never stops talking about justice, Honest said, waving dismissively. As someone who almost never left the palace, Honest only knew about Blayn and Seiryu through his subordinates. I see. I'll pay a visit to the Imperial Capital Security Force, Isteth said. With that, she turned and left. Honest watched her go, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Huh? Why does it feel like Isteth is in a bad mood today? Maybe it's just my imagination. 27. Chapter 27. Confused about love not long ago, General Isteth led an army to crush the southwestern foreign tribes. In just a few days, she returned with a resounding victory, a feat no previous general had ever accomplished. Of course, this excluded General Budo, who rarely left the imperial capital, as his primary duty was guarding the palace. With this latest triumph, Isteth's reputation soared once again. As she walked through the streets, she was constantly surrounded by admirers. Before long, she arrived at the Imperial Capital Security Force headquarters. Is that General Isteth? Why is she suddenly here? Could it be because of what happened to Captain Ogre? But that doesn't make sense. Captain Blayn is under General Isteth's command now. Sure, don't bring up Captain Ogre. If Captain Blayn hears you, we'll be in trouble. Isteth's presence immediately drew the attention of the surrounding guards. She casually stopped one of them and asked, "Do you know where Blayn is?" The soldier, awed by her presence, quickly responded, "Captain Blayn should be at the training ground. I'll notify him right away." "No need. I'll go find him myself," Isteth said indifferently. Meanwhile, Blayn was in the middle of his usual training session with Seiryu. During a break, he flipped through a book he had found in the study, a pictorial guide on Taigu. Books detailing Taigu were rare, and this was the only one he had come across that contained illustrations. Though it only documented a dozen or so Taigu, even that much knowledge was incredibly valuable. The first Taiga listed was National Defense Machine God, Shikudazer, the first and strongest Taigu, known as the Supreme Taigu. Only an emperor of royal blood can wield it. It is said to possess godlike power, but few have ever seen it. Its exclusive secret ability remains unknown. Blayn frowned. The emperor's personal Taigu was supposedly the strongest, yet there was almost no information on its actual capabilities. He continued browsing through various Taigu, blades, swords, rings, gloves, armor, even hekatonkires, which Koro had bonded with. Two Taigu in particular caught his attention. One cut killer, Murasame and dimensional formation, Shambhala. Murasame, also known as the Demon Blade, inflicted a deadly curse with even the slightest cut. Once poisoned, there was no antidote. The victim would die almost instantly. Without prior knowledge, facing a Taigu user wielding Murasame would be a death sentence. Shambhala, on the other hand, was a spatial Taigu that allowed its user to teleport targets to pre-marked locations. If someone were sent directly into a volcano or another lethal environment, Blayn found it interesting, but it didn't compare to his double Kamui, which far outclassed Shambhala in terms of spatial manipulation. The only downside was that double Kamui consumed far more energy. Unfortunately, there was no mention of Isteth's Taigu in the book. He didn't see any blood-type Taiga listed, which confirmed that her weapon wasn't included. After reading through the dozen or so Taigu, Blayn reaffirmed just how dangerous they could be. Fighting a Taigu user required caution. Recklessness could lead to instant death. "Master, are all those Taigu?" Seiryu, exhausted from training, leaned against Blayn's shoulder, catching her breath. Koro lay motionless on Blayn's lap, looking more like a stuffed animal than a living creature. Just then, the training hall doors burst open with a loud bang. Blayn looked up, only to see Isteth standing in the entrance, having kicked the doors open. "You? What are you doing here?" Blayn asked, slightly surprised. He hadn't seen Isteth in a while, and now she had suddenly appeared. Isteth didn't answer. Instead, her icy blue eyes flickered as they locked onto the orange-haired girl leaning against Blayn's shoulder. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Realizing Isteth had entered, Seiryu immediately stood up and saluted. "General Isteth." Koro rolled off Blayn's lap and hit the ground with a thud. Isteth ignored Seiryu entirely and walked straight up to Blayn. "Didn't I already tell you? I don't want to see this happening again." Blayn blinked, momentarily confused. Then it hit him. "Wait, you were serious about that?" If Isteth hadn't brought it up, he would have completely forgotten. Seiryu, utterly lost, looked back and forth between Blayn and Isteth in confusion. "Of course, I was serious," Isteth stated without hesitation. "All right, but we were just taking a break. This isn't the same as last time," Blayn explained. "That's right. Master and I were training so intensely that I almost collapsed from exhaustion," Seiryu added with a grin. Blayn's mouth twitched. Please don't phrase it like that. It's way too easy to misinterpret. Isteth, however, remained unaffected. Her mind went straight to the logical assumption that Blayn and Seiryu had simply been sparring. By the way, why are you so against me interacting with other women? Blayn finally asked. Yeah, why? Isteth muttered, her expression momentarily lost in thought. She genuinely didn't know. She had no experience with romance, nor did she understand her own emotions. You don't know either? Okay. Blayn sighed. He had briefly considered the possibility that Isteth had feelings for him, which would explain her behavior. But he quickly dismissed the idea. Isteth was a complete battle maniac. Someone like her wouldn't be interested in romance. And now, his assumption was proven correct. Good thing he hadn't gotten ahead of himself. Otherwise, it would have been really awkward. Blayn decided not to dwell on it. Maybe Isteth was just an overbearing queen with a strong sense of control. So, do you know why? Isteth suddenly asked him. How the hell would I know? Even you don't know? Blayn said, exasperated. Isteth fell silent. As she thought about it, she realized something strange. She wasn't acting like her usual self. Something had changed. Her emotions shouldn't be affected by trivial matters like this. So why was she feeling this way? Isteth couldn't figure it out. But the more confused she became, the more she wanted an answer. And the only possible answer had to be connected to Blayn, because it was his presence that had made her feel this way in the first place. 28. Chapter 28. Akame and Isteth pushed aside the messy thoughts in her mind. The Prime Minister seems to want you transferred to the assassination unit, she said to Blayn. What kind of place is that? A department for carrying out assassinations. Blayn asked. Something like that. Their main targets are rebels, like Night Raid, which has been making a lot of noise recently. I don't know the details, but the assassination unit operates under the intelligence agency, Isteth explained casually. In any case, it's technically a promotion. You've been climbing the ranks pretty fast. At this rate, it won't be long before you replace an agenda as a general. So, am I expected to go there in the next couple of days? Blayn asked. He was intrigued by this new role. It would give him a chance to interact with the so-called rebels, in other words, the Revolutionary Army. Blayn wanted to determine where he truly stood. Would he continue climbing the military ladder and become a high-ranking officer? Or would he side with the Revolutionary Army to overthrow the empire and establish a new one? Perhaps he would support the royalists, ensuring the young emperor's survival while eliminating the true root of corruption, the prime minister. As for becoming prime minister himself, or even seizing the throne, he had no interest. He wasn't skilled in politics, nor did he care for it. Managing an entire empire wasn't something he was arrogant enough to consider. Since he had ended up in this world, he had to do something. He couldn't just spend his days hunting danger beasts. That would be far too dull. But for now, Blayn hadn't made up his mind. He didn't know the exact military strength of the Empire, the Revolutionary Army, or the foreign tribes. Jumping headfirst into helping the revolution could be disastrous. If the Empire and the Revolutionary Army crippled each other, leaving the foreign tribes to invade in the aftermath, wouldn't that just lead to a repeat of the Ming Dynasty's downfall? It should be within the next few days. The assassination unit has been in turmoil recently, Isteth said. What happened? Blayn asked curiously. The elite group within the assassination unit, 7 of them, are either dead or on the run. Even their commander was killed, and his Taigu, Murasame, was stolen. The one who killed him was a girl named Akame. Apparently, she defected to Night Raid, Isteth said indifferently. She had no sympathy for the deaths of those people. However, Night Raid piqued her interest. She had heard that every single member was a Taigu user, and Isteth loved fighting strong opponents. Even Agenda had been allowed to escape on purpose. Isteth could have killed her before the Revolutionary Army arrived, but she wanted Agenda to return stronger. It would make for a far more enjoyable battle. That was just Isteth's twisted sense of fun. Murasame, Blayn had just read about that Taigu in the book earlier. So, the elite forces of the assassination unit are basically gone? No wonder they want me and Seiryu to go there, Blayn muttered. Pretty much. I heard there's still a Taigu user named Kurome in the assassination unit. she didn't defect. But the rest of the members aren't worth much, Isdeth said bluntly. Still, this is a good opportunity. The assassination unit is in shambles right now. If you make an impact, you'll climb the ranks even faster. That makes sense. Blayn turned to Seiryu. What about you, Seiryu? Do you want this? My opinion, Seiryu blinked, as if the thought had never crossed her mind. To her, obedience to the Empire was absolute. The idea of having a choice in the matter had never even occurred to her. Of course I do. I want to fight alongside Master and carry out justice. Right, Koro? Seiryu looked at her partner. Sure. Koro jumped up, letting out a cheerful noise. Then it settled. I should be returning to the front lines anyway, Isdeth said before turning to leave. Her priority was still war. Nothing else mattered more. After all, she hadn't even figured out what she really felt about Blayn. As for Seiryu working with Blayn in the assassination unit, Isdeth didn't mind. As long as she didn't have to see Blayn getting close to another woman, she wouldn't feel that strange discomfort again. It wasn't as if she would go so far as to forbid him from interacting with other women altogether. As Isdeth left, Seiryu watched her go with admiration. General Isdeth is incredible. She never stops hunting down evil. Then, turning to Blayn, she asked curiously, Master, you seem really close to General Isdeth. Have you known her for a long time? Not really. We only met recently, Blayn replied. Really? Seiryu looked surprised. It feels like you two have a special connection, though. She wasn't sure what exactly made it seem that way, but something about their dynamic felt different. The next day, Blayn received an official summons. A replacement would be sent to take over his and Seiryu's positions in the security force. They were to report to the assassination unit immediately. Since both of the unit's previous commanders had been killed by Akame, Blayn was assigned as the new leader. Seiryu would be his assistant. Their job was to train the remaining members of the assassination unit, most of whom were under 20, around the same age as Blayn and Seiryu. Blayn had already received a personnel file and was reviewing it on the way to the unit's base. The file contained names, weapons, strengths, weaknesses, and background information. And one detail stood out. Every single member of the assassination unit was an orphan. So they specifically select orphans to be trained as killers. Blayn mused. Classic. Scanning the list, he noted that there was only one other Taiga user in the unit. A few had Shingo, but the majority wielded ordinary weapons. The Taiga user was Kirome, Akame's younger sister. Her Taigu, March of the Dead, Yatsufusa, allowed her to control the bodies of those slain by it, effectively turning them into puppets. She could command up to 8 corpses at a time, and they retained the abilities they had in life. However, the more puppets she controlled, the weaker her own combat ability became. All things considered, it was an incredibly powerful Taigu. Akame and Kirome. Blayn muttered to himself, deep in thought. 29. Chapter 29. The Empire's Assassination Corps. The base of the Empire's Assassination Unit was shrouded in a heavy atmosphere due to the series of recent events. The elite group of 7 had once been the most promising, chosen from a batch of children subjected to rigorous assassination training as the top performers. But now, not a single one remained, either dead or gone. Most notably, Akame had outright defected, taking the Taiga Murasame with her. The only members left in the assassination squad were those who originally ranked below the top 7. With their current weakened state, they faced the very real danger of being abandoned by the Empire. If their future performance was deemed unsatisfactory, the Empire would likely discard them and train a new generation instead. And being abandoned meant facing punishment. The rules of the assassination squad were ruthless. Anyone who became too weak would be dealt with. Simply put, if they lost their usefulness, they would be eliminated. And if the entire unit was abandoned, their fate would be far worse than simple punishment. What do we do now? Our only real hope is Kirome, right? She can wield a Taigu. She's far stronger than the rest of us. But our enemies aren't just a single Taiga user. Akame is among them, and she has Murasame in her hands. There's no other way. We have to take things one step at a time. I heard that 2 people from the Imperial Capital Security Force will be sent to assist us today. I wonder how strong they are. The security force? They don't even have a single Shinga user, let alone a Taiga user. We can't count on them. We're on our own. In the base, a few dozen members of the assassination squad gathered, discussing their grim situation. Their best bet was Kirome, the wielder of the Taiga Yatsufusa. She was ranked 8th, the strongest among those outside the Elite 7. To be precise, Kirome had originally been tied with Akame for 7th place. Akame had carried Kirome through the trials, but the elite squad did not allow familial bonds. As a result, Kirome was removed from the elite ranks and given the 8th position. None of the current assassination squad members knew about this, not even Kirome herself. At that moment, Kirome sat alone in a corner, lost in thought. No one dared to approach her, sensing her foul mood. It was clear why. Her sister had betrayed the Empire. Kirome couldn't understand Akame's decision and resented her for it. From now on, she would have to see her sister as an enemy. Meanwhile, Blayn and Seiryu arrived at the base of the Empire's assassination corps, their carriage coming to a halt before a looming building. "Are you Blayn and Seiryu?" A staff member approached to receive them. He wore a white lab coat, suggesting he was part of the research division. Blayn gave a slight nod. Seiryu, on the other hand, was much more enthusiastic. Yes, I'm Seiryu from the Imperial Capital Security Force. All right, from now on, you will be in charge of the enhanced team. There will also be times when we require your cooperation." The staff member spoke directly, wasting no time on pleasantries. Blayn simply nodded, saying nothing more. He had already learned the general structure of the assassination unit. The corps had been divided into an elite team and an enhanced team. The elite team was already gone, so there was no point dwelling on it. The enhanced team, on the other hand, consisted of those who had been deemed weaker than the Elite 7. To compensate, they had been forcibly injected with special drugs to boost their abilities. That was all Blayn knew for now. You have full authority over them. There's no need to report to us. I'll take you to meet them. The staff member then led Blayn and Seiryu to the resting area, a spacious room where dozens of young assassins sat, chatting amongst themselves. As soon as the staff member entered, the room fell silent. "This is your new manager, and this is your commanding officer." After the brief introduction, the staff member had no further role to play and promptly left. The assassins immediately began whispering among themselves. "They're from the security force, and they're supposed to be our managers and officers. They look about our age. They seem a lot weaker than the previous managers. Looks like we really are being abandoned if these are the people they sent to take charge." Blayn's youthful and refined appearance only fueled their doubts. Their previous managers had been formidable. The elite squad's leader had been one of the 4 Rakshasa demons of the previous generation from the Imperial Fist Temple and the former wielder of Murasame. The enhanced team's manager had been an experienced Imperial officer. Now, the ones taking over were 2 young people who looked no different from them. Naturally, skepticism spread through the ranks. Blayn didn't need to hear their whispers to understand their reaction. Seeing their expressions was enough. He let out a small, awkward chuckle. "Looks like we're being underestimated. They don't seem to know anything about Master," Seiryu muttered, unfazed. "But with Master's abilities, it won't be a problem." Blayn cleared his throat lightly, immediately drawing everyone's attention. "Let's start with introductions. My name is Blayn. I was previously the captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force. Before arriving, I familiarized myself with your situation. I look forward to working with you." The assassins nodded. They still harbored doubts and dissatisfaction, but Blayn was now their superior. They dared not be openly disrespectful or defiant. After all, their manager had the power to decide their fate. "I'm Seiryu, and this is Koro. Let's all do our best together." Seiryu beamed with an innocent, carefree smile, while Koro, her companion, appeared harmless. To the assassins, this only made them seem even more unreliable. But neither Seiryu nor Koro were as simple as they looked. "All right, let me get to know each of you properly," Blayn said, glancing at the roster. Unlike the elite squad, the list contained names but no portraits. A strange silence fell over the group. The assassins exchanged uncertain looks. "What is it?" Blayn asked, puzzled. "Well, the previous managers never used our names," a girl finally spoke up. They called us by numbers. I was number 24. That was my ranking. In other words, their previous superiors hadn't even bothered to learn their names. They had always been treated as mere tools, used until they broke, then discarded. Blayn nodded slowly. I see, but that was then. From now on, I'll be calling you by your names, not numbers. 30. Chapter 30. Kyurome, you're Senna, right? The Shingi user who took over Prometheus from Tsukushi. And you're Kelly, the former captain of Team B. And you, Joe. I remember you were the captain of Team C. Blayn had everyone introduce themselves one by one, carefully memorizing their faces as he went. Thanks to his Mangekyō Sharingan, he had an almost perfect photographic memory. For example, he had glanced at the roster back in the carriage, and even now, he still recalled every detail about the individuals on the list. Seiryu stood beside him, also trying to memorize the names and faces of their new comrades. The assassins were growing increasingly surprised. This new manager actually seemed to care about them. He wasn't holding a roster or any kind of notes. Yet the moment someone said their name, he could immediately recall information about them. This meant that he had already memorized their details beforehand. Many of them began to change their opinion of Blayn. Whether or not he was strong, at the very least, he seemed approachable. But then again, could this just be a test? Considering that possibility, they remained cautious, unwilling to let their guard down. Finally, Blayn turned to the girl sitting in the corner. Although he had never met Kyurome before, his memory was sharp. Since her name hadn't come up yet, it was easy to deduce that the dark-haired, black-eyed girl must be Kyurome. Compared to the others, her outfit was somewhat unique. A black crop top, a short black skirt, and thigh-high stockings. She had a petite frame, slightly long short hair, and delicate, doll-like features. Her expression was blank and somewhat dazed. In her hands, she held a katana with mysterious characters engraved on the hilt, likely the Taigu Yatsufusa. On the table beside her lay a bag of snacks, labeled Kyurome's treats. If I'm not mistaken, you must be Kyurome? Blayn asked directly. Yes. Kyurome blinked, snapping out of her thoughts as she lifted her head slightly to look at him. Her gaze was immediately drawn to his blood-red eyes. They were the same color as her sister Akame's. However, unlike Akame's, Blayn's eyes had strange patterns swirling within them. Sister, the word slipped from Kyurome's lips instinctively. No, I'm not your sister, Akame. I'm your new manager, Blayn. Blayn's voice was calm, cutting off any misunderstanding. Sorry, I got distracted for a moment. Kyurome lowered her head slightly. She knew, of course, that her sister wasn't here. It's fine. Blayn turned away, preparing to address the group again. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Seiryu opening her mouth, seemingly about to say something to Kyurome. Without hesitation, he grabbed the back of her collar and dragged her away. He could already guess what she wanted to say. Probably something along the lines of Kyurome is just, Akame is evil. The last thing he needed was for Seiryu to start pushing that ideology onto others. You were originally divided into 4 teams, A, B, C, and D. But now, with only about 20 of you left, we'll be merging you into just 2 teams, A and B. Blayn looked at the group. For now, I'll be in charge of Team A, and Seiryu will handle Team B. We'll see how it works out. The original team divisions hadn't been based on strength. The squads have been fairly balanced, and he planned to keep that balance while redistributing them. As for captains, Kyurome will lead Team A, and Kelly will remain the captain of Team B. Blayn continued. If anyone has objections, feel free to speak up. Most of the group shook their heads, while a few remained silent. They were too used to obeying orders to question them. Blayn waited a few moments, but no one spoke. All right, then that's settled. Starting tomorrow, we begin our first training session under my command. At his words, the expressions of nearly everyone turned serious. Every previous training session had resulted in injuries, sometimes even deaths. Their former managers had been strict. If someone got hurt, the entire team would be punished with imprisonment. And if an injured person couldn't recover quickly enough, they would be disposed of without hesitation. Everyone nodded solemnly, mentally preparing themselves for another round of hellish training. That night, Blayn and Seiryu remained at the Assassination Squad's base. Blayn spent some time finalizing the next day's training plan. Early the next morning, Blayn and Seiryu led the squad out of the Imperial capital, heading toward a designated location. Commander Blayn, what's our training exercise this time? Midway through the journey, Kelly, the captain of Team B, approached and asked. Hunting danger beasts, Blayn replied casually. Hunting danger beasts? Kelly looked surprised. The others also showed varying degrees of shock. Their past training had almost always been about assassination, killing people, many of whom were even stronger than Shinga users. By comparison, hunting danger beasts seemed much easier. However, none of them dared to relax just yet. If the mission required them to hunt special class or even superclass danger beasts, it wouldn't be easy at all. That's right, Blayn confirmed. For this training, the two teams will not be separated. He then elaborated. The targets you need to hunt are 22nd class danger beasts, 10 first class danger beasts, and 2 special class danger beasts. Blayn carried a map marked with locations where danger beasts were frequently spotted within the Empire. Outside human settlements, the land belonged to the danger beasts. Some areas had higher concentrations of them, while others were home to rarer, deadlier ones, special class, or even superclass beasts. Upon hearing the details, the assassins' eyes sharpened. Good thing they hadn't let their guard down. This was going to be brutal. At least they wouldn't have to split up. With Kyurome, their strongest member, they had a better chance of surviving the challenge. Blayn glanced at Kyurome. Even during training, she carried that bag labeled Kyurome's treats. He found it a bit curious. Was it really just snacks? Sensing his gaze, Kyurome blinked at him, tilting her head slightly. Then, as if realizing something, she suddenly pulled the bag closer to her chest, looking at him with a blank yet wary expression. I'm not sharing. 31. Chapter 31. Special Class Danger Beast. I'm not going to take your snacks, Blayn spoke with a hint of awkwardness. Then, he and Seiryu led the group into a dense forest, a place where danger beasts were commonly found, perfect for training. Upon arriving, Blayn came to a halt. Team A and B, don't stray too far from each other, he instructed. That way, you can provide support if needed. Seiryu and I will only step in if your lives are in immediate danger. Otherwise, you're on your own. Yes, we understand. The group nodded in unison. That said, none of them put much faith in his words. Their previous managers had never cared whether they lived or died. Even if Blayn seemed different, they weren't about to let their guard down. Preparing for the worst was second nature to them. After that, Team A and Team B split up, though they remained within close proximity. Blayn had set identical training objectives for both teams. They each had to hunt 10 second-class danger beasts, 5 first-class danger beasts, and 1 special-class danger beast. Naturally, Blayn and Seiryu accompanied them. Before long, Team A, led by Kyurome, encountered a third-class danger beast. However, since third-class beasts weren't part of their training target, they didn't need to engage. You don't need to worry about this one. I'll take care of it, Blayn said immediately. The moment he finished speaking, he dashed forward at high speed, his twin swords flashing as they struck the creature's massive head. Ding! Host has slain a level 3 danger beast. Reward: 3 system points. By eliminating these lower-tier threats, Blayn not only ensured smoother training for the team, but also gained system points in the process. The members of Class A widened their eyes slightly. Even though it was just a third-class danger beast, they could tell that their commander's combat skills were far from ordinary. He might be young, but he had some real ability. That said, they doubted he was stronger than Gazuki, the former manager of the elite squad. After all, Gazuki had been both one of the 4 Rakshasa demons and a Taiga user. Blayn's behavior also struck them as unusually kind. If it were their previous manager, they would have been forced to fight through everything in their path, making their training significantly more difficult. However, Blayn simply found it inefficient to let them waste energy on weaker beasts. Plus, the extra system points didn't hurt. Meanwhile, Seiryu took a similar approach. Any 3rd and 4th class danger beasts outside the training objectives were swiftly eliminated by her. Justice executed. Her face contorted into its usual crazed expression as she swung her sword, sending a danger beast's head flying. She looked more ruthless than the monster itself. Thanks to recent physical training, her hand-to-hand combat skills had improved, and her strength and speed had noticeably increased. Koro clung to her neck like an accessory, as if Seiryu didn't see the need to let him waste energy on such insignificant evil. Blayn had previously advised Seiryu to be more objective when judging people, but he had never said anything about danger beasts. To her, they were all evil and needed to be eradicated. And honestly, danger beasts weren't something that required moral objectivity. They were a threat to humanity. Killing them was simply practical. Why do I feel like Officer Seiryu looks a little terrifying? No wonder she became our commander. She's definitely not as simple as she seems. She's scary. I definitely don't want to get disciplined by her. Even these assassins, hardened by years of killing, felt uneasy watching Seiryu in action. As time passed, both Team A and Team B began encountering second-class and first-class danger beasts. Blayn noticed something peculiar. All of them, almost simultaneously, retrieved small white pills from their pockets and swallowed them. So the enhanced team needs to keep taking drugs to maintain their abilities? Blayn made a mental note of this. His knowledge on the matter was still incomplete, so he wasn't entirely sure how the process worked. At first, Kyurome didn't use Yatsufusa's ability to manipulate corpses. Instead, she fought the danger beast with the sword itself. The corpse puppetry ability consumed a lot of stamina, so she only planned to use it when absolutely necessary, like against a powerful opponent. Still, as a Taigu, Yatsufusa was far superior to any ordinary weapon in sharpness and durability, making it incredibly effective even without its special abilities. After Team A took down 3 second-class danger beasts and 1 first-class danger beast, Blayn gained a clearer understanding of their individual strengths. Overall, Team A was solid. There was no obvious weak link. Perhaps the ones who had been weak had already been disciplined long ago. The most exceptional member, of course, was Kyurome. She wasn't just powerful. Her combat sense was sharp, and she remained composed in battle. And this was without even using Yatsufusa's corpse-controlling ability. Team B was also strong. To maintain balance, Blayn had assigned more Shingi users to Team B, since Kyurome's presence in Team A gave them an overwhelming advantage. Ding! Host has slain a level 4 danger beast. Reward: 1 system point. Ding! Host has slain a level 3 danger beast. Reward: 3 system points. As time passed, Blayn accumulated a substantial number of system points. Team A had progressed slightly faster than Team B, having slain 1 more first-class danger beast. Now that night had fallen, Blayn decided it was time to set up camp. Everyone did well today, he announced as they gathered around the campfire. Team A hunted 7 second-class and 3 first-class danger beasts. Team B was just slightly behind with 1 fewer first-class kill, but they still performed admirably for these trained assassins. Second and first-class danger beasts weren't much of a challenge. At most, some of them sustained minor injuries. But special-class danger beasts were a different story. That would be the real test. Commander Blayn, are you not the strict type? Kelly, the captain of Team B, couldn't help but ask. They had been on edge the entire time, fearing that one misstep would lead to their discipline. Having a commander who wasn't excessively harsh was something they weren't used to. There's a limit to how strict one should be, Blayn replied. You haven't done anything wrong, so why would I be needlessly harsh? Kelly was momentarily at a loss for words. This commander was completely different from their previous ones. If it had been their old manager, even being slightly slower than Team A would have earned them a severe scolding or worse punishment. At that moment, Blayn suddenly stood up. He had sensed something. Kyurome, gripping Yatsufusa tightly, issued a warning. A danger beast is approaching. It might be a special class one. 32. Chapter 32. Taigo, Yatsufusa. Blayn immediately turned toward the source of the disturbance. Though the dense forest obstructed his view, he could vaguely make out the silhouette of a danger beast. Focusing his gaze, he saw that it appeared to be a plant-type danger beast, and its size was extraordinarily massive. far larger than the Class 1 and Class 2 danger beasts he had encountered before. It was highly likely to be a special class danger beast. Prepare for battle. Stay alert. His stern command made everyone tense up. Facing a possible special class danger beast, their expressions turned grim. They had to successfully take down their target while ensuring they didn't sustain severe injuries. Otherwise, they would be executed. This mindset had long been ingrained in them. Before long, the special class danger beast emerged before them. It was an oddly shaped creature with a deep green body, unrecognizable as any known plant. Towering over 10 meters tall, it had no obvious lethal appendages, but could move swiftly using its unique root system. This is a verdant chrysis. It really is a special class danger beast. Seiryu was the first to recognize it. Watch out for the venom it sprays. It's extremely toxic. However, her warning came a moment too late. Before she could finish speaking, the verdant chrysis mouth released a burst of green venom, scattering it in multiple directions like a showerhead. Everyone managed to dodge just in time, except for one girl with twin ponytails. A stray droplet grazed her arm. The venom immediately seeped into her skin, spreading rapidly through her bloodstream. No, I don't want to die yet. Dark green streaks began appearing across her skin, a clear sign of poisoning. A wave of weakness and pain overtook her body. In reality, the verdant chrysis venom was far deadlier than what she was experiencing. Ordinarily, within minutes, the victim's heart would fail, leading to death. Even if the antidote was administered in time, there would still be lingering after effects. The longer the delay, the more severe they would be. However, thanks to prior treatments, her body had a much higher poison resistance than the average person. She wouldn't succumb so easily, and the speed of her physical decline had significantly slowed. Yet, her greatest fear wasn't death by poison. It was the irreversible aftereffects of the antidote. These aftereffects could impair her physical abilities. If she fell below the required standards, she would be disposed of. Quick, get the antidote for Yasha. Kelly shouted urgently. Fortunately, they had stocked up on antidotes, and one of them was effective against the green kit's poison. I got it. A young boy frantically rummaged through his backpack before finally retrieving the antidote. He hurriedly administered it to Yasha, who soon fell unconscious. I just hope the aftereffects aren't too severe. If she can't meet the standard, she'll... The boy muttered anxiously. No time to worry about that now. First, we take down that damn beast. Kelly growled, his face dark. He had a bad feeling that they were about to lose another comrade. Yes, the boy gently laid Yasha on the ground and grabbed his sword, ready to join the fight. Kyurome, seeing Yasha's condition, narrowed her eyes. A cold, murderous glint flickered within them. Yatsufusa, determined to avenge her comrade, she activated the power of her Taigu. Meanwhile, Blayn and Seiryu remained on the sidelines, watching the battle unfold. They would only step in if someone's life was in immediate danger. Master, are we really just going to stand by? Seiryu asked, concerned. There's no need to worry. They were trained by the Empire's assassination unit. If they can't even handle a special class danger beast, how are they supposed to take on Night Raid? Blayn said calmly. A special class danger beast was roughly on par with an average Taiga user and far stronger than a typical Shingu user. The assassins in this unit, even those without Shingu, were close to the level of Shingu users. Those who wielded Shingu were even stronger, especially Kyurome, a Taiga user. If they couldn't defeat a special class danger beast, they had no hope against Night Raid. At that moment, Kyurome activated Yatsufusa's ability, summoning 5 corpse puppets in an instant. In life, these 5 have been named Natara, Doya, Wall, Hinter, and Rokugu. At a glance, it didn't even look like corpses, but they were indeed dead, retaining only a faint trace of self-awareness derived from their final obsessions. They followed Kyurome's orders without question. More importantly, they still possessed the full strength they had in life. Doya, dressed in the attire of the northern tribes, wielded twin pistols, working in tandem with Senna, who used the gun-type Shingu Prometheus. She fired precise shots that pierced the verdant Chrysis's mouth. Natera, a light blonde youth dressed in white with a white mask, focused solely on protecting Kurome. Since controlling the corpse puppets significantly weakened Kurome's own combat ability, his role was critical. With the rest of the team launching a relentless assault, the special class danger beast, Verdant Chrysis, was soon on the verge of death. "Let me finish it." Kurome stepped forward. Her corpse puppets obediently halted their attacks. The others also stopped, knowing full well what was coming. Kurome intended to turn the Verdant Chrysis into another corpse puppet. With a single strike, she ended its life. Immediately, Yatsufusa's blade changed, black runes surging into the Verdant Chrysis's body. Within moments, it was transformed into a new corpse puppet. The battle was over. Without hesitation, Kurome reabsorbed all of her corpse puppets, including the newly acquired Verdant Chrysis, back into Yatsufusa. Controlling so many at once was a heavy burden on her stamina. Just as everyone began to relax, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Another special class danger beast burst forth. A massive black scorpion emerged from underground, its enormous body spanning several meters. Its gaping maw could swallow a person whole in a single bite. Its target was the nearest girl. The attack happened so abruptly that even Kurome had no time to summon a puppet to intervene. "Run!" Kurome, reacting the fastest, shouted in warning. But it was too late. The scorpion was far quicker than its prey. The girl's face was filled with horror and despair as the monstrous creature lunged at her, completely unaware of the barely perceptible spatial distortion forming in front of her. 33. Chapter 33. Teleportation. The moment the black giant scorpion burst out of the ground, Blayn immediately reacted. This was undoubtedly a special class danger beast. Otherwise, it wouldn't have such a strong ability to conceal its presence. Just moments ago, Blayn hadn't sensed any trace of it underground. There was no question that the orphans' lives were in danger. He had to intervene. Running wouldn't be fast enough, so he decisively activated the jutsu of double Kamui. Both his left and right eyes possessed the ability to open a space portal. It wasn't an ability exclusive to either eye. Rather, one could open portals over long distances, while the other functioned at close range. Because he had both, Blayn could use them simultaneously. His right eye's Kamui transported him into Kamui space, while his left eye's Kamui opened a portal at a distant location. On top of that, double Kamui significantly increased his teleportation speed, allowing him to move almost as if he were teleporting instantaneously. As for why he didn't use the offensive power of his left eye, its long-range attacks were strong, but they typically only severed limbs. Against a massive, highly resilient special class danger beast, it would be difficult to land a one-hit kill. If he failed to kill the black giant scorpion instantly, not only would he have wasted his eye power, but he also wouldn't have time to save the girl. To ensure her safety, he chose to teleport himself over instead. In the blink of an eye, Blayn emerged from the distant portal, appearing as if out of thin air between the girl and the black giant scorpion. With a swift strike, his black and white twin swords slashed at the scorpion's head. The beast had no time to react to the sudden appearance of a human before it suffered a devastating blow. The defense of a special class danger beast was truly formidable, especially for one like the black giant scorpion, which was covered in a tough exoskeleton. Even with his attack, Blayn wasn't able to decapitate it in one strike. "Commander Blayn." The girl behind him finally reacted. "Get back to safety," he warned. She quickly retreated to her companions. The scorpion stiffened from the heavy blow to its head, but within moments, it started regenerating at a visible speed. Clearly, while it lacked particularly lethal attacks, its defense and regeneration abilities were an enormous problem. Blayn took advantage of the moment before its head fully regenerated and launched another attack. It wasn't often he had to use his Shingu's dual blades ability. His black and white swords danced in rapid succession, his movements fluid and practiced, like a true master of dual wielding. In a single burst of attacks, he not only severed the scorpion's head, but also hacked off its two massive pincers. "Is it dead?" "That damn thing just burst out of the ground. It almost got us." "But how did Commander Blayn get here so fast?" "Wasn't he with Commander Seiryu?" "She only just arrived." I have no idea. Everything happened so fast. I didn't even catch his movements. It was like he teleported or something. That speed was insane. As the group was still recovering from the shock, Seiryu arrived with Koro, rushing to Blayn's side. In truth, only a few seconds had passed. Blayn's reaction and speed were just that fast. Need my help, master? The evil still isn't quite dead, Seiryu asked. She was right. Even after all this, the black giant scorpion was still clinging to life. Good thing Blayn hadn't used his left eye's long-range attack. At most, it would have twisted the scorpion's head off, and the girl would have been doomed. No need, he said calmly. I want to see if this thing can still regenerate when it's nothing but meat scraps. More importantly, he needed to personally kill it to earn system points. If Seiryu took the final blow, all his effort would go to waste. His gaze hardened, and the speed of his slashes increased even further. In no time, the black giant scorpion was reduced to a pile of flesh. By the time he had sliced through half of its body, it was already dead. Ding! The host has slain a special class danger beast. Reward, 20 system points. Killing the black giant scorpion had been a hassle, but the rewards were worth it. System points, 46. Blayn opened his system panel and saw his newly accumulated points. Ding! The host has exchanged Constitution plus 26, consuming 26 system points. Ding! The host has exchanged Strength plus 10, consuming 10 system points. Ding! The host has exchanged Agility plus 10, consuming 10 system points. Strength, 40, Agility, 40, Constitution, 90. With his points allocated, Blayn turned to the others and said, "Looks like we're having scorpion meat for dinner. Special class danger beast meat should be even tastier." The group had braced themselves for a reprimand, but instead, Blayn casually talked about food. Just then, Yasha, who had been poisoned by verdant chrysis earlier, began to regain consciousness. "Yasha, how do you feel?" Kelly asked immediately. The others gathered around, all concerned for her condition. Yasha checked her body and quickly realized she was far weaker than before. She covered her eyes with the back of her hand, unable to hold back her tears. With her current state, she no longer met the assassination unit standards. When they returned, she would be disposed of. She didn't want to die, but that was the cruel reality. There had never been a single exception. Anyone who fell below the standard was executed. The moment they saw her expression, everyone understood. The group fell silent, their faces filled with sorrow. Some turned away, secretly wiping away tears. Hirom also watched Yasha with a pained expression. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she drew Yatsufusa from its sheath. "Before you get disposed of, I'll set you free. Disagatala. That way, we'll always be together." Her voice was chillingly emotionless, her expression frighteningly cold. She didn't want to lose a comrade, so she would keep her close in the only way she knew how. In other words, Hirom intended to kill Yasha herself using Yatsufusa and turn her into one of her corpse dolls. Kelly hesitated, wanting to say something but stopping herself. The others also looked conflicted but didn't speak up. They all understood. The death that came with disposal was cruel and humiliating. Compared to that, Hirom's way was almost merciful. At least Yasha would stay by their side, even in death. Even Yasha accepted it. Tears streaming down her face, she moved her hand away and nodded, giving Hirom permission. But just as Hirom was about to drive Yatsufusa into Yasha's heart, a hand suddenly grabbed her wrist. A confused and exasperated voice followed. "What the hell were you thinking, you idiot?" 34. Chapter 34. Hirom really is an idiot, huh? Why? Did he just call me an idiot? Hirom's expression froze in shock, her eyes staring blankly at Blayn. "She's not dead, yet you want to use Yatsufusa to turn her into a corpse puppet." Blayn looked completely baffled. "You guys don't actually think I'm going to discipline her, do you?" He was aware of the so-called punishment system, but it wasn't something imposed by the higher-ups. It had been put in place by the previous manager of the enhanced unit. In contrast, the former manager of the elite unit never enforced such a rule. None of the Elite 7 had ever been disciplined. They had either fallen to powerful enemies or left the Empire entirely. Aside from Akame, the the so-called traitor, two other members of the elite unit, Nagasho and Pony, had vanished, taking the Shingu Water Dragon sword and Yakuto bottoms with them. If Blayn hadn't taken over the assassination squad, the punishment system would likely still be in place. No wonder Kirome and the others reacted so strangely. Commander, my body, I don't think I can hold on much longer. Please, I don't want to be disciplined. Let Kirome kill me instead. Lying on the ground, Yasha pleaded with Blayn. At least this way, she could stay with everyone in some form. Kirome wanted to say something, but held back. She had always followed orders without question, never defying the Empire or her commanders. If Blayn insisted on executing Yasha as a form of punishment, she wouldn't utter a single word of protest. So when exactly did I say I was going to punish you? Blayn was at a loss for words. The moment he spoke, the entire group froze. Kirome was stunned, unable to believe what she had just heard. What? Yasha, equally bewildered, stared at Blayn in disbelief. Didn't you hear me? The punishment system was something your former commander came up with. I have no intention of following his rules. I have my own way of managing things, Blayn said flatly. Then I... Yasha murmured in a daze. You'll be fine. Just rest and recover when we get back. Or, if necessary, someone can escort you now, Blayn said. Really? Yasha couldn't believe it. Did she actually have a chance to live? Of course. In my squad, there is no punishment system. Train as usual, and if you're injured and can't continue fighting, just return and heal. You don't have to worry about anything else, Blayn stated firmly. His words left not only Yasha, but everyone else in shock. This commander, was he just too kind? For the first time, they felt warmth and kindness from a superior. It was an unfamiliar sensation. Commander Seiryu was another example. While terrifying in battle, she was surprisingly friendly when interacting with them, often laughing and chatting. Of course, if the goal was to cultivate heartless killers, Blayn's leniency might be seen as a flaw. But he didn't care. He was here for the money, not to serve the Empire. He did things his own way. Besides, no rational person would treat a living soldier like disposable trash and discipline them to death, right? So Yasha doesn't have to die. Kirome asked, still somewhat dazed. Kirome, you really are an idiot. I've already explained this twice now, Blayn said, exasperated. He had been crystal clear. At the same time, he noticed that Kirome fluctuated between being a naive airhead and a ruthless killer. That cold, detached look on her face earlier, the one that suggested she was ready to kill her own comrade without hesitation, wasn't something a normal person would have. It was clear that the Empire had twisted everyone in the assassination squad in one way or another. I'm not an idiot, Kirome muttered under her breath, sounding slightly disgruntled. Only now did everyone truly process the situation. Yasha wasn't going to be disciplined. She could go back and recover. Kelly immediately reached out to help Yasha up. Yasha, should I go with you to get treatment? Realizing she wasn't going to die, Yasha's energy returned. Actually, I'm not that bad off, just weak. I can still fight. If you're able to move, you can continue training with us. Since Yasha was a member of Team B, Blayn turned to Seiryu. Seiryu, keep an eye on her for now. Yes, Master. Seiryu nodded enthusiastically. Wait, so Blayn is actually Seiryu's master? Someone in the group asked, curiosity piqued. That's right, Master is incredibly strong, so I've been learning from him, Seiryu replied proudly. Commander Blayn is really strong. After witnessing Blayn's battle with the special class Danger Beast, everyone had been left in awe. His sheer speed was something none of them could even react to. But above all, it was his kindness that had completely won them over. For now, let's prepare dinner. Training resumes tomorrow morning. But stay alert. We might get attacked by Danger Beast tonight. Team A and Team B will take turns keeping watch, Blayn instructed. Got it. I'll handle the cooking. I know exactly what seasoning makes scorpion meat taste amazing. The atmosphere had lightened considerably, and everyone worked together to prepare the meal. Blayn was tending the fire using the chopped wood, having started it with the traditional fire drilling method. With his current strength, it was a trivial task. Just then, Kirome walked over and sat down beside him. She seemed to have something on her mind, but she hesitated, remaining silent as she simply watched him. Do you need something? Blayn finally asked. Not really. I just can't believe how different you are from our previous commander, Kyurome said softly, tilting her head back to gaze at the night sky. I mean, I'm just thinking like a normal person. Your last commander was so deranged that I seem unusual by comparison, Blayn said with a sigh. This empire had far too many twisted people, so much so that being rational now seemed strange. Kyurome was silent for a while. If you had been our commander back then, maybe my sister wouldn't have betrayed us. As she mentioned her sister, she instinctively hugged her knees, looking small and vulnerable. 35. Chapter 35. Naturally oblivious. Naturally dark, that's hard to say. Blayn said, Your sister's Akame, right? Didn't she tell you anything before she left? Ever since hearing the name, Akame, he'd been paying attention. After all, this world was Akame Ga Kill, which meant Akame was likely the protagonist. Blayn made a mental note to stay alert. If he ever encountered Akame, he couldn't afford to be careless. After all, protagonists always had their plot armor. She did. My sister tried to persuade me for a long time, but I refused. I will never betray the Empire, nor will I betray my fallen and living comrades. Kyurome spoke with firm conviction. I see. Then doesn't that mean you'll have to fight Akame? Blayn couldn't help but ask. That's right. So, I'll kill my sister with my own hands. This way, she'll be with me forever. Kyurome's expression darkened again, just as it had before with Yasha. This time, she seemed even more twisted. If she used Yatsufusa to kill Akame, then yes, Akame would never leave her side. But that Akame would be nothing more than a corpse puppet. What meaning was there in that? Blayn couldn't understand. Are you sure about this? After being killed by Yatsufusa, a corpse puppet shouldn't retain its former consciousness, right? Correct. Only lingering obsessions remain, but that's just an instinctual reaction. The puppet itself has no awareness. Kyurome continued, I love my sister the most, but she betrayed the Empire and betrayed us. I'll make her part of Yatsufusa so that she'll never leave me again. Blayn hesitated to say more. This was ultimately a personal matter between Akame and Kyurome. As an outsider, it wasn't his place to interfere. Before long, the food was ready. Some of the scorpion meat was used for stew, while the rest was grilled. A danger beast of this size, classified as special class, was more than enough to feed all 20-plus people to their fill. As they enjoyed dinner, laughter and conversation filled the air. Master, try this. I grilled it myself. Seiryu approached, holding out a skewer of scorpion meat. From the way she did it, it seemed like she wanted to feed him directly rather than have him take it. Blayn didn't mind and took a small bite. How is it? Seiryu looked at him expectantly. It's good. Blayn nodded. Seiryu beamed with delight. Commander Seiryu and Commander Blayn seemed to have a really good relationship, Yasha remarked. Her condition was neither too severe nor too light. The poison had damaged her body, and while she could still function normally, her physical recovery and growth would be permanently slowed. Her overall strength would never return to what it once was. It wasn't just Yasha. Others in the group felt the same way. Of course. After all, I like Master the most, Seiryu declared boldly, without the slightest hint of embarrassment. Blayn was caught off guard. That sounded almost like a confession. But when he saw Seiryu's innocent, straightforward expression, he realized she probably didn't mean it the way it sounded. Whoa, that's a confession, right? That was totally a confession. Commander Seiryu is amazing. She's so bold. Honestly, I'm kinda jealous. Makes me want to fall in love, too. Not that I'd ever get the chance. The group erupted into chatter. As assassins of the Empire, they were forced to cut off such emotions. Even sisters like Akame and Kyurome weren't allowed to be in the same unit, let alone entertain romantic relationships. But now, with a new commander who knew what might change, realizing they had misunderstood, Blayn quickly corrected them. That's not what she meant. Just as he said, Seiryu herself didn't even understand what they were talking about. She was too naive in some ways, but at the same time, terrifying in others. To her, the world was strictly divided into justice and evil, with no in-between. She would only listen to Blayn's guidance. At that moment, a girl with long blue hair curiously asked, Commander Seiryu, I hope you don't mind me asking, but do you want to date Commander Blayn? Date? What does that mean? Seiryu tilted her head, looking genuinely confused. The blue-haired girl awkwardly shook her head. And never mind. She was stunned by how innocent Seiryu was. The rest of the team was equally amazed. Blayn sighed, just as he thought. Seiryu had almost no understanding of these things. Meanwhile, Kyurome remained completely uninterested in the conversation, silently eating her grilled meat as if nothing else mattered. As the night deepened, exhaustion set in. They had spent the entire day hunting danger beasts, and everyone was eager to rest. Team A would rest first while Team B stood guard. Then they would switch roles at midnight. Blayn found a suitable spot, lay down, and close his eyes. His sleep was always light, staying alert in case of any sudden threats. But with Seiryu around, he felt somewhat reassured. As a teammate, Seiryu was incredibly reliable. As an enemy, she'd be a nightmare. Towards the second half of the night, Seiryu approached to wake him. Leaning close to his ear, she whispered, "Master, it's time to switch." Blayn had already woken the moment she got near. Got it. He sat up immediately, fully alert. Team A and Team B swapped shifts, splitting into pairs to cover different positions. Blayn was paired with Kyurome. He greeted her. "How was your sleep? Did you get enough rest?" Kyurome yawned, looking drowsy. "Not bad. I should be fine. The energy I spent using Yatsufusa has recovered." "All right." Blayn nodded, saying nothing more. After a while, Kyurome suddenly spoke up. "Once training is over, I want to apply for leave to visit Saiga." "Saiga, that's a high-risk area where super-ranked danger beasts appear, isn't it?" Blayn recalled seeing it on the map. "Yes. If I'm lucky, I might find a super-ranked danger beast Death Tagul hibernating there. If I catch it asleep, I can kill it with Yatsufusa." Kyurome explained her intent. "But that place is extremely dangerous. You're planning to go alone?" Blayn frowned. "Yeah, I don't want to drag anyone else in such a risky mission." Kyurome nodded slightly. "Then I'll go with you. At least let me watch her back," Blayn suggested after a moment of thought. But Kyurome hesitated. She didn't want to involve her commander in this. Blayn immediately cut her off. "I'm your commander. How could I let you go alone on such a dangerous mission?" Kyurome blinked in surprise. Then, a rare smile appeared on her face. "All right." 36. Chapter 36. The contrast is too strong early morning. As the sky brightened, visibility improved significantly, even though the sun had yet to rise. The members of Team B were already awake, getting up early to resume their unfinished training. Yesterday, the special class danger beast, Verdant Chrysis, was taken down by Kyurome. "Team A is progressing much faster than us. We can't afford to lag too far behind," said Captain Kelly, rallying his team. "The commander has been so good to us, so we mustn't disappoint him." The entire team nodded firmly in agreement. As before, Team A and Team B split up but stayed within a reasonable distance to support each other if needed. Seiryu, in particular, kept a close eye on Yasha, who was physically weaker than the others. Throughout the morning, they encountered several danger beasts, but very few were Class 1 or 2, leaving their training objectives incomplete. The most challenging task, hunting a special class danger beast, remained unmet. Finally, after completing their targets for Class 1 and Class 2 danger beasts, they discovered a special class danger beast in a swamp. It was a massive, spider-like creature with a black body, crimson front claws, 6 legs, and 6 red eyes. Scattered around it were countless spider eggs. Once the battle began, it was almost certain that a swarm of baby spiders would hatch and attack. This should be the special class danger beast, known as Bloodbath Mother. Its main body isn't particularly strong, but those spider eggs are the real problem. There are at least 1,000 spiderlings, each as strong as a Class 4 danger beast. They're the real threat here, Kelly warned in a hushed tone. "We need to take it down in one decisive strike. If the Bloodbath Mother dies, the spiderlings will either scatter or cease attacking. The faster we kill it, the better." A single Class 4 danger beast wasn't much of a threat, but 1,000 of them? That was an entirely different challenge. Without hesitation, Team B sprang into action. Those wielding melee-type Shingu charged forward, while Senna, the only member equipped with a long-range firearm-type Shingu, Prometheus, provided cover fire from a distance. Prometheus was modeled after the Imperial Arm, Roman artillery, Pumpkin, but its power was far inferior. Unlike Pumpkin, which increased in strength under greater danger, Prometheus lacked such an ability. However, it was still a formidable weapon, capable of performing ricochet shots, bouncing attacks, and other special firing techniques. Its main drawback was decreased accuracy with continuous shooting. Despite their best efforts, an instant kill was unlikely. Alarmed, the Bloodbath Mother immediately activated its defense mechanism, hatching the spiderlings. From all directions, a wave of baby spiders surged forth. Calling them baby spiders was misleading. They were each about half the size of an adult human, merely small in comparison to the Bloodbath Mother itself. "Kill it now, before we get surrounded," Kelly shouted. Working together, they successfully eliminated the Bloodbath Mother before the spider swarm could overwhelm them. With the mother dead, the spiderlings either froze in place or scattered in different directions. They had no intention of chasing after them. Only the special class danger beast mattered. Kelly let out a sigh of relief. "Guess we got a bit lucky. Among special class danger beasts, the Bloodbath Mother is relatively easy to handle, provided you understand its habits." The others chimed in. "We only just finished our training objectives, but Team A is still way ahead of us. Let's head back. Yasha needs to rest and recover as soon as possible." However, just as they were about to leave, they felt the ground tremble unnaturally. More danger beasts! And from the sound of it, more than one. If they're all Class 1, this could be a real problem. Damn it, did the bloodstains here attract them? Should we call for Team A support? Their expressions darkened. After a long day of hunting, exhaustion was setting in. The effort to quickly eliminate the special class danger beast had drained their stamina. They were in no condition to take on multiple Class 1 danger beasts. The concern wasn't whether they could win. The real issue was avoiding casualties. A victory with heavy losses would be meaningless. Within moments, the creatures appeared in their field of vision. 5 Class 1 danger beasts. Seeing this, Kelly made a swift decision. We should call for backup, or maybe if Commander Seiryu. Before he could finish his sentence, Seiryu had already drawn the massive sword from her back. "Your training is complete. You don't need to deal with these Class 1 danger beasts. Leave them to me and Koro." As she spoke, her expression twisted into a feral grin. A terrifying aura of bloodlust radiated from her, sending a chill down Kelly's spine. "Those who dare to harm our comrades, evil shall not be forgiven." With a furious cry, she commanded, "Koro, hunt down these evildoers." She stomped the ground, causing cracks to form beneath her feet, and launched herself forward like an arrow. In one hand, she gripped her enormous sword. With the other, she hurled Koro toward the enemy. Most of the team had assumed Koro was nothing more than Seiryu's adorable pet, a harmless companion with little combat ability. But as they worried for Koro's safety, the creature suddenly transformed. In an instant, Koro grew into a monstrous beast, larger than any of the Class 1 danger beasts. Gone was its cute appearance. Its massive, bulging eyes glared menacingly, mirroring the vicious expression on Seiryu's face. Seiryu, relying solely on her martial prowess, was able to battle a Class 1 danger beast head-on. But Koro? It ripped through them like they were nothing. With a single swipe, Koro tore the head off a 5-meter-tall bear-like danger beast, then casually tossed it into its mouth, chewing noisily. Its powerful jaws crushed the skull effortlessly, bone fragments crunching between its teeth before being swallowed whole. In mere moments, Seiryu had slain one of the beasts, while Koro had shredded the remaining 4. Even the wounds Koro sustained healed rapidly. As long as its core remained intact, it was virtually immortal. As a biological-type Taigu, Koro was on par with superclass danger beasts. After all, many Taigu were crafted from the remains of such creatures. Even without activating its special ability, Berserk Mode, Koro utterly dominated the battlefield. Against Class 1 danger beasts, it was complete overkill. The rest of Team B stood frozen, stunned by the sheer brutality of the scene. Just then, Blayn arrived with Team A to check on the situation. He had heard the commotion, but, knowing Seiryu was present, chose not to rush over using double Kamui. "Master, Koro and I defeated those evildoers," Seiryu called out excitedly, running up to Blayn with an eager expression. Clearly,
no more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.